Happy New Year, everybody, and Tony here with my review of Verdi's Rigoletto with conductor Friedrich Pretorius, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. This marks the 7th time I saw Jan Boss's production of Verdi's Rigoletto at the Deutsche Oper Berlin because I wanted to see, hear, and witness Byung Gil Kim perform the role of Monterone. Yes, he's also performed the role of Monterone over a year ago when Yulia Muzichenko sang Gilda, and I thought that his performance back then was stirring, and he continued to steal the show as such a superb and totally involving singing actor. But in terms of his current performance as Monterone, I thought that he was a lot more involved, engaged, as well as thoroughly incredible in terms of how far he has grown as a singing actor. Byung Gil Kim has pretty much accomplished the Sisyphean task of performing a lot of the bass baritone and bass roles in Rigoletto. More specifically, his experiences with the court usher and Il Conte Ciprano during his slightly younger years, and even having a go at not just Monterone, but the much deeper, more cavernous part of Sparfucile. However, if you ask me which of these roles I prefer Byung Gil Kim as, I argue that he makes a great Count Monterone because he does have that rough, howling, spitting, snarling, sneering quality in his bass baritone / basso cantante voice. He can hit those high notes, and he has that rugged resonance that makes him ideal for such a dejected, angry, furious old nobleman who wants revenge against Rigoletto for not only mocking him and his family, but also for besmirching his name. That was what Byung Gil Kim delivered as Il Conte Monterone. He delivered a whole lot of bile, viciousness, anguish, and a whole lot of virile charisma that continues to make him an awesome singing actor to witness on stage. I've always made it a point that Byung Gil Kim possesses movie star Hollywood good looks in terms of the way he was able to convince me that this was Monterone, who was so dejected by Rigoletto's mockery that he ends up hurling curses at this court jester, as well as everybody else who was associated with him. He could pretty much give Nicolas Cage, Keanu Reeves, and Matthew McConaughey a run for their money because of his tall, handsome, and virile charisma that has become the greatest asset that Byung Gil Kim has been owning ever since I first saw him on stage about 7 or 8 years ago. Sure, some people who love great singing might still find fault in terms of his vocal projection. Some might still find it throaty, some might still find it unrefined or crude, unpolished, or not really that smooth or even, but I could still defend that crudeness and roughness in Byung Gil Kim's voice because that's vocal acting right there in terms of what he could accomplish as Il Conte Monterone. The rougher parts of his voice, as well as that crudeness, made me thoroughly convinced that this was a nobleman out for revenge and someone who is not gonna play nice with anybody at the court, even when he ends up being arrested and probably executed. He still never gives up that bile that he has inside his system, and Byung Gil Kim reflected that so amazingly. Sure, it would have been a dream to have much smoother voices such as Fernando Correnna, who may have been a lot more well known as Leporello and Dr. Bartolo, but he totally sold it as Il Conte Monterone, all thanks to his superb technique found in his bass baritone / basso cantante voice, and even the true bassos who sang Il Conte Monterone, such as Plinio Clabassi and Antonio Zerbini, and I argue that Plinio Clabassi was really the best out of the two because of his great use of squillo, his dark tones and cavernous tones at that, as well as that sheen and focus that he had in his handsome, velvety, and cavernous basso profondo slash cantante voice. And I dare not forget about John McCurdy, Bonaldo Giotti, and Samuel Raimi, who were not only renowned for singing Sparfucile, but were also renowned for singing the role of Monterone, aside from being very famous for Sparfucile, in which Byung Gil Kim also did just that. And this was also thanks to John McCurdy's, Bonaldo Giotti's, and Samuel Raimi's excellent use of squillo, dark natural tones, and that cavernousness that they possessed in the deeper parts of their voice. Nevertheless, whatever issues and gripes listeners possessed with Byung Gil Kim, I could still defend him until the ends of the earth because he is a thoroughly committed singing actor. He knew how to act with his voice, with everything that he's got, and he is one of the most engaging singing actors I've ever witnessed on stage, who continues to grow from strength to strength, especially when it comes to acquiring more important leading man roles. I would even consider Il Conte Monterone a leading man role because he is just as pivotal of a character as the main characters of Rigoletto, the Duke, and Gilda because of the curse that he hurls upon Rigoletto. And when all is said and done, I salute Byung Gil Kim for what he was able to accomplish as Il Conte Monterone, as well as his continuous ascent into more leading man roles. So I do hope that he continues going on in that direction, and I do hope that he will continue tackling a lot more leading man roles, especially with the likes of Don Giovanni, Mephistopheles, Bertram, Il Comte de Saint-Brie, as well as the more kingly roles like King Mark from Tristan und Isolde, and even an upcoming King Henry the Fowler or König Heinrich der Vogler from Wagner's Lohengrin. So I'm really excited to see where Byung Gil Kim will go from here, because the material that he continues to produce as a singing actor continues to be just as thoroughly astounding, especially when he continues to take advantage of his rugged, rough, and crude bass baritone voice to bring out the best, let alone the goods, of Il Conte Monterone. Tobias Kehrer continues to be a thoroughly engaging Sparfucile, all thanks to how much he was able to resonate his handsome, darkly toned, velvety, basso profondo slash basso cantante voice with nobility, aplomb, and great volume, thus continuing to produce amazing vocal magic. Etienne Dupuis actually grew a lot more in clarity, resonance, and virility as Rigoletto, especially when he was able to let out a lot more juicy, rich tones out of his mouth, and also exhibited a great deal of coordination from bottom to top, thus ensuring that every part of his voice was homogeneously crafted as well as handsomely woven from beginning to end. So I salute Etienne Dupuis for such a laudable, let alone excellent job as Rigoletto, all thanks to his sterling technique, which managed to grow with excellence and pristineness. Jared Wehrlein was still a handsome, virile contesoprano. Kyle Miller continues to be athletic, dashing, and thoroughly engaging as Marullo. Stephen Marsh continued to take advantage of his richly toned and handsomely hued baritone voice to make the best out of the court usher. Andrei Danilov continues to be just as charismatic, handsome, virile, and engaging as the Duke of Mantua, all thanks to how he made his full lyric tenor voice ring with aplomb and confidence. And yes, even though he was ill, let alone under the weather in this performance, I could still commend him for taking great advantage of his full lyric tenor voice to even pull out some interesting nuances and some Harry Houdini moments that made him a greatly consistent, let alone consummate singing actor. And when he resorted to singing certain areas in pianissimo or dolce or even piano, what I noticed about those effects was that he was able to bring out a lot more character character, smoothness, and that snake-like quality that made the Duke of Mantua a thoroughly manipulative bastard who knew how to play chess with his potential victims, and not just someone who constantly parades around a big voice around the stage thinking that he's all that. In terms of his moments with Gilda and Maddalena, he was able to sell it in terms of using shading, colors, and nuances to make the Duke of Mantua the snake that he is and manipulate his potential conquests to do his licentious bidding. While there should have been another tenor to jump in for Andrei Danilov as the Duke of Mantua, like I could have suggested Attilio Glaser or even probably Kang Yun-Shine Lee if he's thoroughly ready to sing the Duke of Mantua, I could still give Andrei Danilov a lot of kudos and a lot of credit for what he continued to embody as the Duke of Mantua, complete with youthful virility, snake-like serpentine charm, as well as his trademark full lyric tenor voice that actually rang so handsomely despite being under the weather. Nevertheless, I still have to commend him for his perseverance, and I pray for a speedy recovery for Andrei Danilov, that he will be in much better health. At least when all is said and done, he continued to be thoroughly engaging and involving as a singing actor. Kieran Carell was just as charming and just as handsome as Matteo Borsa, all thanks to his light lyric tenor voice showing a lot of sheen and loveliness. Stephanie Wake Edwards continues to grow in great chestiness and a lot more roundness, richness, and volume as both Maddalena and Giovanna. Even listening to her a lot more closely, she didn't just remind me of an amalgamation of Monica Sinclair and Giulietta Simonotto, but also adding in Felicity Palmer because of how much she was able to let her voice ring throughout the theater, especially accompanied by a great deal of chestiness. Therefore, Stephanie Wake Edwards was just as much of a star tonight as both Maddalena and Giovanna, all thanks to how she was able to let her gleaming, glorious, and wonderful mezzo-soprano voice radiate throughout the theater. Brenda Ray also grew in coordination as Gilda, and this was especially evident in the second half of the opera, let alone her death scene, which I thought was her best moment ever because she was able to take great advantage of her chest tones and her coordinated chest tones, especially when Gilda was dying from being killed by Sparafucile and Maddalena. She also did coordinate her chest tone pretty well before she entered the so-called house that Sparafucile and Maddalena were hosting before getting killed, let alone before the storm scene reaches its apex. And I continue to salute Brenda Ray because of how she continued to use sensitivity, that silvery quality in her voice, and a great deal of sweetness to make Gilda a thoroughly involving character, both vocally and theatrically. So she does deserve her props for improving incrementally, while I could still give her props for improving on her coordinated chest tones, as well as maintaining her sensitive, silvery, and sweet portrayal of Gilda. I still encourage her to take a lot more advantage of her chest tones, coordinate them a lot more, not just at the end of the opera, let alone the second half of the opera, but also start it from the very beginning and carry it all the way out through the end of the opera, therefore ensuring a whole lot more consistency and a whole lot more vocal strength from beginning to end. If light coloratura sopranos and lyric coloratura sopranos of the past, such as Lotte Schöne, Fritzi Jockel, Lily Pons, Adela Kern, Beverly Sills, Roberta Peters, and Rary Grist can coordinate their chest tones, sing a great deal of chest tones, especially where Lotte Schöne's case is concerned, and really have a go at coordinating head voice and chest voice and not just singing those wonderfully sparkling top notes, then I'm really sure that Brenda Ray can do just as greatly as they can, because she definitely has a lot of wonderful material to work with, and I encourage her to take a lot more advantage of coordinating her chest tones and really using a lot more chest tones to prolong the health of her voice. She still did a good job in portraying Gilda with sweetness and sensitivity, but she must continuously take advantage of her chest tones, let alone coordinate her chest tones well, and much better this time so that she can ensure a much longer career. Alexandra Omens continued to be just as sparkling and gorgeous as La Contessa Ceprano, all thanks to her silvery and lovely light soprano voice, and Maria Vasilevskaya continues to be just as elegant as the Lady in Waiting. So overall, the singing actually grew better in terms of what I saw with Etienne Dupuis and Brenda Ray as Gilda, and it also maintained that excellent quality as I found out through Tobias Kehra's continuously excellent portrayal as Sparfucile. Even Byung Gil Kim managed to make me thoroughly root for him, let alone admire his continuous efforts as a singing actor, thanks to his stirring portrayal as Il Conte Monterone. Plus, I have to give Andrei Danilov a whole lot of credit because of his perseverance and his strong will to continue to sing the Duke of Mantua despite being under the weather. And I dare not forget about Stephanie Wake Edwards' consistently awesome vocal prowess for rocking it as Maddalena and Giovanna. And when all is said and done, Byung Gil Kim continues to sell it as a singing actor thanks to his consistent portrayal of Il Conte Monterone. He continues to take great advantage of his vocal roughness to make this character come to life, and even though his voice may not be for everybody because some might find it throaty or too rough or a bit uneven on some occasions, I could still defend Byung Gil Kim for taking great advantage of that vocal roughness, ruggedness, and crudeness to make the best out of Il Conte Monterone's part, as well as own it, body and soul, and most importantly, voice. He continued to sell it as Il Conte Monterone because I believe that this is his best part that he has sung in Rigoletto, way better than Sparfucile, and probably way better than the minor parts of Il Conte Ceprano and the Court Usher. He definitely owns it as Il Conte Monterone, all thanks to his virile charisma, that rugged resonance found in his bass baritone voice, and that thoroughly handsome stage presence that made him win in my eyes as a singing actor. The conducting done by Friedrich Pretorius continues to be bold and booming. He definitely took advantage of the loud moments of the opera, as well as the storm scene in its epic thrills, not to mention the moments where he was able to tease out certain moments in the orchestra, specifically in the quieter moments. But he was at his strongest when he conducted boldly and loudly, thus ensuring that there was a lot of energy and strength in the orchestra and the chorus. And the chorus and the orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin were thoroughly amazing, as they've always been. Byung Gil Kim continues to sell it, not only as Il Conte Monterone, but also as a singing actor. Sure, his bass baritone voice / basso cantante voice may be an acquired taste for those who prefer a much smoother sound, let alone a sound that has a lot more squillo and way more vocal presence. But I continue to defend Byung Gil Kim because of his thorough dedication as a singing actor, taking great advantage of that roughness, ruggedness, and that overall howling, spitting quality in his voice to take great advantage of characterizing Il Conte Monterone as a dejected, furious, and angry nobleman who wishes nothing but bile, hatred and viciousness against Rigoletto and his family, and he sold it tonight. Byung Gil Kim definitely sold it as Il Conte Monterone, which is a role that he has been singing for what I believe to be roughly for 5 years, let alone less than that. And here he was owning this role with every single fiber of his being, both vocally and theatrically. So kudos to Byung Gil Kim for owning it and winning it as Il Conte Monterone and taking great advantage of that ruggedness in his voice to make this role come to life, even though it is a very thankless part. And for those of you who caught this performance of Verdi's Rigoletto at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what'd you think of it? Did you feel that Byung Gil Kim was at his vocal best as Il Conte Monterone? Did you also feel that he was able to go from strength to strength as a singing actor? Did you also feel that he was a lot more vocally secure than when you first heard him in this role? Was there another singer who stole his thunder? Or did you feel like his performance as Il Conte Monterone was rather lackluster? Please let me know in the comments below. Well, that's it for my review of Verdi's Rigoletto starring Byung Gil Kim as Il Conte Monterone. Tune in next time for another review. So until then, Happy New Year, everybody!